and we like ran into each other like a Scooby-Doo episode and scared the shit out of each other.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Paranormal Stories. I am Carpool Tunnel, aka Chris, and my co-host today is Kenny, the ghost himself.
What's up, everybody? It's Spectre Falling back again for an awesome time.
And we're gonna get a little spooky. Um, just as always, we're not trying to convince you that all this stuff is real. These are just our experiences and the things that we have experienced. Believe what you want. Have you ever heard of the Hatchet Lady?
Uh, I instantly thought of like ICP, the Hatchet Men, and then I thought of Lizzie Borden, so I might not.
Um, It's a story within West Virginia forests in Virginia. I think it all leads up like what is that mountain range? It's like all forest area from Virginia to like I might have been to
The
Tennessee.
Appalachian Mountains.
It might be Appalachian. Yeah,
I know
because
there's all kinds of like old, like it's almost like Native American lore with the Appalachian people. Like
the
they're fucking wild, dude. They got some stuff.
the Hatchet Lady. We were told this story by my mom because she was a child. She grew up in Virginia, and same trip that I spoke about in the last paranormal stories, where they got my brother a uh, Ouija board for his birthday.
Oh God.
But my mom told us a story about the Hatchet Lady, which is she would be kind of like an American Llorona.
Okay.
Um, she supposedly killed her children with a hatchet, but then she haunts the forest. So if you ever see like a green and red light together, like she supposedly has one green eye and one red eye, and that's how you know it's her, the Hatchet Lady,
Oh
because what
shit.
she specifically looks for children, and she specifically is supposed to like take children from tents, from cabins, just children out at night in the wilderness, and they they'll never be seen again. I remember my dad telling part of the story too. I think he might have just made this part up, but about how she she's like a 300-pound woman and that she'll sit on the child before she takes their head off with the hatchet and
Oh,
suffocates them. Um, it sounded like more something that was a story that my dad had heard from Cuba about a similar type of. And I don't know if you call her like a demon or a cryptid or whatnot, but so when we were going to Virginia on that trip, we
like with
stopped.
stuff like that, it's so hard to classify that. Like I don't know, an entity, I guess.
It's an entity that does not have a specific origination like the Llorona, like because Llorona is like that too. Is like
It could. So is it
it
technically like a tulpa?
Tulpa.
It's like a. It's what Slender Man is. It's like it's not real, but enough people have written about it and made it basically given it a persona and made it real because it lives through our like culture and shit now.
Possibly,
But it's
because
taking a form. I
the
don't think Slender Man has taken a form. I
like this
hope.
the story does come from the West Virginia Native Americans. What are they called? I
Isn't
don't
that like
the
isn't that like
volunteers
the
or no?
whole like the Roanoke area?
The
Isn't that where that
Roanoke.
happened?
It might be the Roanoke area.
Oh fuck, where that whole town just like up and vanished?
It 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 could possibly be that.
That shit's
Don't
wild.
don't quote me on this, but so we stopped in West Virginia and stayed at a cabin on our way to Virginia that and we had heard the stories, you know. My oldest brother was he was at least 16, so he was like the oldest one. So my brothers are it would be 16, 14, 12, and then I would have been 6.
Oh damn.
Um, and we all saw the same thing again. This was something that wasn't just like put into our brains because we all were staying in the same room of that cabin, and at night there all of a sudden there was just a green and red light coming into our cabin that it I think it first awoke my oldest brother who screamed, and hearing your oldest
Yeah.
brother scream,
You're like something is up.
um something was up, and we all look at this window and we see this lady's face
Oh,
looking into the window, and just with this piercing green eye and piercing red eye. And we all freaked out, ran out to go. Like, I mean, this is a point where it wasn't just like the little kids scared. No, all of us
yeah.
ran out to my parents, woke them up, and said this. And my dad went in the room and he said he saw movements, like something was walking around the cabin. And we all kind of got into the living room area. So now my mom and dad were scared. Um, my mom was the one who brought the story of the Hatchet Lady thing, and like she's the one who knew the folklore about it, and the fact that the it was literally at the window with the kids because that's
Yep.
she's trying to take the kids away. And yeah, we all ended up sleeping in that living room area, but my dad I don't think ended up sleeping because he was too afraid to go outside, but he just kept by
I
that
don't
front
blame him.
door and
Yeah, if it comes
making
in,
sure
it's
all the
getting it.
windows locked. My dad's not one who has guns, so I think he had like the fire, like I
Yeah,
think
fire poker.
fire poker, and like,
Anything you can whop something with, man.
and that next day, when we finally kind of like left, they went and looked at the other side of, and there were footprints,
Oh,
and I think it reassured his story of it because they were heavy footprints, like big, giant, like fat feet, like not big this way. They were
yeah.
just, they were
They had some weight on them.
they had some weight on them, and probably maybe like a 6 foot, 7 or 6, 7 in women's size, but they were just very wide. Like there was just like,
Yeah,
um, and they were around that window,
that's nuts, dude.
and like that, the hatchet lady, that's one we don't fuck with. I, we all don't even say that term,
There,
but only time I ever speak about her is when I tell this story. And
there's, there's one I don't like to talk about. In Texas, there's one I will talk about first. Like, no big deal. But the second one, real quick. The first one. Do you know what? You know what like a gravity hill is or something? Like where you park your car, put it in neutral, and they say most of the time they'll say the magnetics is what moves the car, like the Earth's magnetic force, or like it's an optical illusion. You're actually going downhill, you look like you're going uphill.
yeah,
So in Texas, they have these ghost tracks. And we used to live by them. Like we used to walk past them, we used to go across them in the school bus. And what happened, a school bus stalled out on the tracks and the train fucking took it out, and every street in that town is like named after the kids that died in that fucking crash. It's like Stephen something Street, Grace Street, and all this shit. And so if you park on the train tracks and put your car in neutral, the fucking car will push
push.
off of the train tracks. And like we put fucking baby powder or flour or something all over the back of our car when we did it. And I'm in like first grade or kindergarten, so I'm absolutely flipped out. And like the car moves and stuff, and we look at it afterwards, and you can see like pushing, like where somebody like put their hands on it and pushed, and like pushed with their body against it. And it's like that one freaks me out because like I could never explain that one. Like there's like news shows about it and shit. But like the one we never talk about is because it scares my dad so much. Like I never experienced this, but there's a bridge in Texas called the Donkey Lady Bridge. And apparently people like to fish under this bridge and like they'll see a lady down the river, like the whole lady in white standing in the river, and she's standing in the river kind of just like, oh, look at me, I'm so pretty, and you see her, she's got her back to you. And then like they notice like she's upset, so you go to try to help her, and it's the same thing about how she killed her kids, she drowned them in the river, and you she turns around and her head is a fucking donkey, and she like fucking gets you. And like I guess my dad didn't know this story because he's from Indiana, and he was down there fishing under the bridge and shit. And he came home early, and my mom was like, "I thought you were going fishing." He was like, "I got creeped the fuck out. I don't know. I don't like it. I don't know. I don't know. It was weird where I was at. I just got creeped the fuck out and came home." And she asked him like, "Where'd you go?" And she was like, "Dude, that's the fucking Donkey Lady Bridge." And he was like, "The what?" And she told him all about it. And he was like, "Never fucking talk to me about a fucking donkey lady again. Oh my God." And he's like the most superstitious person in the world. So like we wouldn't even drive over that bridge after that. He was like, "I'm never going near that again. I got the weirdest feeling down there." He was like, "I kept like I'd bait my hook and cast and I'd look around and I'd be like, who's out here with me? But I don't like this. I don't like this." He was like, "I felt like I was in danger, not like somebody was looking at me, like somebody was gonna try to hurt me." My dad's a big dude, so he's not afraid of shit. So for him to be like, I
That's
felt like like he was scared. He was like, nah, I didn't. It just felt wrong.
it's crazy because everything besides the donkey base is
Yeah.
basically the same story as the La Llorona, and
Yep.
which is the crying lady, and
So
then
I think
also with the
maybe
hatchet
somebody
lady.
just like, I think maybe somebody
It's
just
but they're in
like,
different parts of the
yeah,
world. Maybe it's the same freaking type of, like the Slender Man thing,
same
the
kind of
same type
entity,
of entity that
just manifesting in different ways. That's
is. So, do you know about La Llorona?
yeah.
The crying lady in Mexico who drowned her kids in the river, and then whenever you're by a river that is connected to these rivers in Mexico, you hear a crying lady. You just hear crying coming out of the forest. And it's like hysterical kind of crying.
Yeah.
It's a little over exaggerated, so like it's something that you can't really mistake as river or like wind. It's not just like
It's like
no,
it's
it's like
it's like the crying, like the loss of a loved one, like grief.
and the crying sounds like it's like there's so
So
much pain in the crying.
it's almost like a siren song too, like it lures you.
Yeah, that's you just connected another freaking folklore thing to it. 'Cause everything that you described with the donkey lady sounded like like you were leading up to a Llorona story, but then
Yep. And then the
she
donkey twist, it's like an
and then
M.
the
Night
donkey.
Shyamalan.
um, I've heard the Llorona twice. Um, at least what sounded like just a disembodied crying lady, distraught. Um, the first time was where were we at? Arizona? Might have been Arizona. Um, another family trip, but we were by a river and just within the darkness of just like this, there's a campground and there's just like this long street. It's all darkness and stuff, but we were like right next to a river. That the entire night we kept hearing a lady crying, and it was just like that was like a little creepy. We're like, but we also kind of like maybe someone in one of these tents is just a lone
Going
lady
through
going
it.
through it type thing. But I also heard this once in Lamar, where I went to college. That's where I went and played college basketball. It's like on the east coast of Colorado, and it's like by a lot of desert type of. It's like by Nebraska and by
Okay.
yeah. We had a river alongside, which is like the only natural preservation area of that part of Colorado. Everything else is desert, and then all of a sudden there's just like a random forest surrounded by this river. That river leads to this spot too that is called that is like leads to like tunnels underneath Lamar, and above it,
Ooh.
it's called the Devil's Den. Um,
These things are named these things for reasons. I tell people this all the time.
and this area already is a hot spot for energy because there's a lot of I mean, it could also even be part of like Native American burial grounds and stuff. But this river, you go out there, especially by yourself, and it you would just keep hearing a woman crying at this river. But it was almost drawing you there, like because it feeds off of your empathy and compassion as a
Mhm.
human that you hear someone in distress, you hear someone and you want to go help them. You
Yep.
want to and it's a primal thing that happens that it kind of it's also almost like a trance thing that they put you into where you want to go help. And then because it brings you closer and closer to the river. And every single time that's happened to me, because I'd go out there because that's where I would go smoke weed because that was like a spot right behind our college that off
Yep.
college grounds and no one's there that no streets next to it or anything. It's like specifically like a
You're
little
in the
nature
cut,
thing.
as they say.
And it it was always before I would hit the weed too. That was a big thing too, because I'd hit the weed and I'd get so scared and paranoid and I'd run out.
I do that
But
sometimes.
anytime before I would hit the weed, I'd be drawn to this, and it would be like, but then I'd be like, ah, I'm gonna hit this first, and then maybe I'll go check it out or whatnot. But um, if I wasn't out there to smoke weed, I would have been so completely drawn to follow it because it always sounded like someone needed help, and I'm like that empathy part of me wants to go help people.
Yep.
Um, when we started entering the Devil's Den, though, the energy changed completely. Where then when we would enter that part of so it's like a it was like a cement catacomb thing that went underneath like the main highway and it like and then once you go because it's all cement you go to this part and then there's water and you kind of have to walk to the water and then it gets higher again and then at the end of it which is like a good 10-minute walk underneath basically the town of Lamar um, then there's like a water tube
Nuts.
that you would have to crawl through, but that leads all the way to the end of town to like the high school. And it was a big thing. Like we go out there and just drink and party in the Devil's Den, and just because there no one that's gonna find us, catch us, like that was like the safest place for college kids to go party. So you know, we'd get all courageous and be like, all right, let's see how far we could crawl through this water tube.
Oof.
Um, And that was like a big thing at like end of the night when we were drunk enough, we'd start crawling through it. And we'd always go in groups. But every single time we tried this and we would start crawling through it, all of a sudden we just start hearing babies crying.
Oh
And then with the babies
no.
crying, because it's us, how babies have that certain thing that connects
Yep.
into our nature where like
It's like
distress,
an instant, like, I need to help that.
we'd hear the babies crying and we'd already be freaked out, but then we'd start hearing water running. And it almost sounded like a giant wave of water was going to come through this water tube and just drown
Oh
us all out.
God.
And it would freak us every single time out where we would like start crawling as fast as we can out of the cave, like people hitting their heads on the top of it, like people injuring themselves because they wanted to get the hell out of this tunnel. But it always started with babies crying, and then it sounded like a river was about to hit us. And it was not one time did any water come through that tunnel,
It's nuts.
but it would always sound like raging waters. It wasn't just like some sound of like maybe a dripping rain thing. No, it sounded like
Yeah,
a river was coming at us. And it was that part of that tunnel led to that same river where the lady was crying. And so it was like it always felt like it was maybe connected, and it always felt like it was like La Llorona. Because at first they're trying to draw us to the river, but then they're trying to draw us when we're trying to get away from the river through this tunnel, sending us out by like making us think water was running to get us back into the river area where we heard the women crying. But there is no explanation any of us could have with the babies crying.
that's nuts.
Especially underneath, like, because we were like underneath the highway at that time, like basically, and
Yeah, you're not gonna hear anything above you,
like the only thing you would really hear is when like
like a
a
big truck.
yeah, a semi truck would drive
Yep.
over the road, you'd hear the rattling, but that was all you would actually hear. But that running water, all of us would hear, and all of us would freak out and like run. It's always such a crazy experience when everyone experiences the
Yeah.
same stuff.
Yep. Ugh.
Part of the story I didn't tell with the Lamar La Llorona hauntings. A lot of people may have heard of Lamar, or at least this story, because it did make national news. And this is right above the tunnel that leads to the high school. There was a lady who drowned both of her kids in her bathtub in this house. She ended up being convicted of killing both of her children, and then she ended up going to prison, um, probably in a psych ward or whatnot. But she had said that she heard a voice tell her that she needed to drown her babies. And this is something that is known within the Lamar community, and that house has been basically blocked off and abandoned. No one has lived in that house since. But it was like the one house that you always avoid looking at when you walk down that street towards that high school. And um, that has actually happened. That this isn't just like a folklore story. That actually happened, and it's well documented. So it even gave more truth to why we felt the La Llorona spirit out there in Lamar, which is connected to a river that's connected to Mexico. Every time I experience walking past a house too, it's almost like it draws you to look at it, but you know it is there. And like I always had so much fear to even look at it, even in the daylight. Because if you look at that house and you see her specter, which is what a lot of people say they have experienced, I didn't want to experience that, so I kind of refused to look that way. But there's just like this drawing feeling to make you look at that house. And that's why having some spiritual strength will protect you in these certain situations. Where if your will could tell you not to look at evil, even though evil is trying to make you look at it, it will protect you. So having some sort of spiritual protection is I mean, it's why I wear this crystal made by a Native American that is blessed. This gives me my own little spiritual protection where in time I could hold on to this and draw from the positive energy of the earth through the crystal. And that is spiritual protection 101.
I've never like like I used to ghost hunt or whatever, but it was mostly just me and my friends goofing around in places we shouldn't be. But like there were a couple times where like the goofing would just stop and we'd be like, you know what? This is weird. Like the vibe is completely off. And I don't know if it's like something supernatural or we're gonna run into somebody else out here, but we need to fucking leave. Like one time in Nashville, they have a graveyard that's 24 hours a day. So we would go there quite often and just dick around. And there were some other people doing the same thing. And we like ran into each other like a Scooby Doo episode and scared the shit out of each other. And we all realized you're like, oh god, okay, we're all here just trying to do the same thing. Okay, all right, we all scared each other. All right, and we didn't go back there for a minute because it's like they were doing some weird shit with like candles and like chants and shit, and like we were just out there with fucking cameras and stuff. Like, are there ghosts? It's like, no, I'm not trying to summon anything at this graveyard. I'm just like looking around.
See, I mean, all the stories I'm talking about is before phones had cameras like that.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, so like when we were doing all this stuff, we weren't like sitting there recording. I mean, when it came down to the camping stuff, that was like our cell phones still were like there was no color on the cell phone.
I
So,
have a wild theory about why it's harder to get like people are always like, well, everyone has a phone on them now with a camera on it. How come there's not more like videos of like ghosts or UFOs or something? And I have this weird theory that all of that is digital. So if they're like operating on a different like fucking light spectrum or something like that, what if we just don't pick it up with a digital camera anymore? Like analog, I don't know. Analog film picks up a lot of fucking crazy shit that digital film doesn't really capture.
it might have been why we were able to capture that cryptid because that was on a tape
Exactly.
thing.
I when you said that, I was like, ah,
He still has that somewhere, but it's like it's almost impossible to
yep,
get onto a digital format
yep.
because it's like
It's
really old tape.
and then when you do transfer it or whatever, you're gonna lose a lot, and like that's what I'm talking about with the digital. I think maybe it's like just a different like wavelength almost that we just don't pick it up, and neither do the cameras.
Yeah, I mean digital is more a mathematic thing with colors and pixels and all this like how it translates everything compared to
Yep,
like where tape is more of a imprint onto a piece
yep.
imprint of a light onto a
Like
piece of tape.
old school photography, it's like alchemy. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like you're doing magic almost, but digital stuff doesn't have that charm to it. I don't know.
It also makes sense why, I mean, the couple times that I have been in some very haunted locations lately, um, with my camera, I'm like filling stuff, but I'm like trying to record, and nothing has come out really on those
Yep.
images and stuff like that. But it's like, um, I guess this isn't that scary of us, or like, because I didn't see anything, but I got to film in this house that was like 200 years old. And it was really short. Like I had to like duck the entire because I'm too tall to be at this house.
Yeah.
Um, you get up to the second floor and they kept it how it was back in the day with like a baby's bassinet, and then they
Ugh.
had all these
Oh,
old
creepy.
in that baby's bassinet too, they had a doll.
Oh no, dude.
And like this room had the caution tape, like don't enter this room. And then around the room you have all the pictures of the child who died in that room because
Fuck,
that child
man.
died as a baby, so they kept it as the and like this is something that I felt like most courageous with, but is because of my Santeria background of like being able to protect myself spiritually. That like no one would want to go to this part of the like we were not filming at all in that area, and but my curiosity and just wanting to experience something, I I went up while everyone else doing their because I was the sound person, but while everyone was doing some stuff that didn't need sound, I went up there into that and I explored those rooms with the camera. So I do have that footage. I'll put a little bit there because the whole house itself is creepy. And then there was like this little attic area that almost looked
Ooh.
like a seance room. It was like the only room that was tall enough to I could be in,
Yeah, where
and
people could stand in a circle.
it was all like a circle attic area where the window was pointed
Oh,
specifically at the moon. So the moon light would
oh,
light this room up. It was
yeah, they're doing some shit in there.
that that was like the that part of the room was like one of the ones that we kind of filmed in. We were filming a horror film too, so it was like they specifically filmed like one scene in there. Um
That's nuts, man.
yeah, that place, so there was so much energy that I was just kept like when you're in that place, you never felt alone.
Yeah.
Even when if you were by yourself, there was like someone watching you. Then they had this little graveyard too right next to it, like the from the people like the baby that died was buried right there. Um
Tennessee is bad about like they just have like fucking dead people in their yards because they used to just like bury them in their yards back in the
yes.
day. But they'll like build on top of that land and don't move those people. And it's like, dude, there are dead people everywhere.
Yeah, that which kicked into my mind. Yeah, because the people that own that place built their own house a little next door to it, so they were the ones who led us into this like historical place. They had all these cows and horses that at night they just started like getting riled up and they were like it
Oof.
almost like they were scared and they were startled. And at that same time too, because it's like right there by the grave area, like the wooden fence that was like probably a good 20 pounds, all of a sudden it would just start opening and slamming, closing and slamming. And
Oh
it
man.
it didn't make sense that wind could do that to something that
Yep.
heavy. And I did get that on camera.
That's nuts.
Because and this would so it's also might have just been the spirits kind of being mad at me or whatnot. But so and I don't know if anyone who worked on the film's gonna watch this, but if they did, well, now you know what I was doing outside when I would go out and have my cigarette. Um, I I also brought beer with me, so I'd go out there and just crack a few beers, and I'd be drinking out there, you know, and everyone, because I was the only cigarette smoker, so I'd be like, oh, I'm gonna have my cigarette and go out. But specifically, every time I'd be there, I would be like slamming my beer as fast as possible because all this shit was happening around me, and I'd be like running back in and be like, I'm out of breath because I had a cigarette, not because I just ran.
It's like, why are
But
you sweaty? I was watching Cops.
it because this would also always happen because I didn't need the sound guy anymore, but I relied on them for my ride back to the campus because we were like a good like hour and a half away from campus. This is
So
more
you'd just be waiting around either way.
yeah, so I'd always bring some beers to prepare myself and
Hell yeah.
yeah, it was that I won't forget that house though because of how much energy was just in it.
Yep.
Like so many people died in that house,
Oh,
and it because it was in Brighton, Colorado, but it's part of like old Brighton, and like that house had literally been there for 200 years.
that's so crazy, dude. I love like there's buildings here that have been here since like the 1800s and like once the weather's not so cold and I don't have to wear my stupid snow pants, I want to start taking my phone down to like downtown Adrian, which is not really anything, but they have like library is from like 1890 something and it's wild. I just want to go in and kind of poke around. I don't know.
I think that the Tivoli it was I think the Tivoli might have been like 1792 or some shit
That's
when
so crazy.
when that was first built. Yeah, I mean you could see it within the architecture of the Tivoli too. Is like parts of it are so old, and then the basement part that I'm talking about that I was like in doing editing like late
Mhm.
at nights. That is the only part of the Tivoli that has been reconstructed and they CU Denver, my college, because three colleges live on this campus.
Yeah,
That is the only part that has been reconstructed like to a new building. So all of the old stuff was rebuilt. So
that's
that,
nuts.
and it's the only part you go in and it looks like a new building. But the brickwork around it is still the old ass brickwork. And it's still like underneath it. There's the Tivoli has catacombs that go all the way
Whoa,
down to that river area. So like there's like one certain part of the Tivoli where you can enter the catacombs, and they have it closed off all year round until like Halloween where they do like ghost tours and stuff like that.
that's wild,
Um,
dude.
I almost got to film in it. It took a lot of paperwork and stuff to try to get into it. So we were able to actually took paperwork for us to just go down in there to look at it. Because it used to be like a really old bar, like a speakeasy type bar
Yep.
that was underneath there,
So
and
that those tunnels helped them quite a bit then.
and and this is like two stories under the Tivoli was the bar, but then there was stories beneath that, and there's these
Dude,
long catacombs that
I swear we just knocked stuff down and built on top of it. Or didn't even knock it down, just built on top of it.
thank you all for joining Paranormal Stories. My name is Chris, aka Carpool Tonal, and my guest.
Spectre Falling, aka Kenny. I do it backwards every time.
I do it backwards every time too. And we'll see you next time on Paranormal Stories.
Whoa, ah, 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 ah.
Get some good sleep tonight after this.